And that's great because that's a great opportunity for expansion, once the awareness get to the right level to really, be able to cover what I was mentioning before is the global market. And, there are hundreds of thousands of companies, I think, out there that can benefit from a solution like this one that probably didn't hear about the opportunities yet and are still trying to figure out how do I open a legal entity in this country? Who do I send there to open a bank account? Who can I call to kind of figure out how to hire people? That is all complexity that is not needed.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Welcome back to the Run the Numbers podcast. I'm CJ Gustafson, your host, and I'm recording this podcast from my mother-in-law's house, which is awesome because your boy got chicken parm last night for dinner. The chicken parm. This podcast features me interviewing Simone Nardi, the CFO of Globalization Partners, one of the largest providers of employer of record services. Basically, Globalization Partners is a group that you can work with when you want to hire abroad. And what we do is we go super deep. You can call this a masterclass in going abroad, a CFO's masterclass in hiring abroad. We talk about international expansion and everything that goes into hiring great people and doing it in a cost-efficient and strategic manner. We talk about what is an employer of record, what's a PEO, a professional employer organization. I believe that's the acronym. The difference between the two. We talk about how he forecasts his own revenue model because it's a bit nuanced. And then we go through all the different CFO frameworks that he has learned over time. Simone has a super interesting background. He has experience in the broadcast space, working at NBC Universal, being a CFO of divisions there, working at Fubu. I was once a Fubu customer, a cord cutter, they called me. And now he's been at Globalization Partners for 2.5 years. Enjoy this awesome conversation with Simone. But first, a word from our sponsors. Quick math, the less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. And back by popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please do it, guys. I really need this. Cash is king. As the CFO of a SaaS company, I know firsthand how important it is to maintain a healthy AR balance. If you can't effectively manage cash, you can't service debt, make payroll, or invest in growing your business. That's why I'm so excited to partner with the sponsor of today's episode, Maxio, the leading billing and financial operations platform for B2B SaaS. Maxio helps top SaaS companies like Chili Piper, Crunchbase, and Stack Overflow get cash in the door faster by automating collections and dunning. Gone are the days of manually chasing down invoices. Join the 2,500 plus subscription businesses using Maxio, formerly SaaS Optics and Chargeify, to eliminate revenue leakage and streamline order to cash. It's never been easier to get paid. Visit maxio.com/run the numbers to supercharge your financial operations in 2024. Not only does requesting a demo using the Run the Numbers link help support this podcast, your boy, you also receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. Woo! That's maxio.com/run the numbers. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. Simone, thank you so much for joining me on Run the Numbers, a fellow Red Sox and Boston sports fan.
Thanks, CJ. Very nice to see you and very nice to be here.
I want to go deep today on expanding internationally, how companies think about their footprint with employees. And it all kind of starts with just understanding what an employer of record is, because I know there are many ways to skin the cat. You can start your own legal entity. You can jump through all sorts of hoops, but you can also work with some trusted partners to scale more efficiently. So I guess off the bat, how would you define an employer of record or an EOR?
It's a great question. Thanks, CJ. So an EOR is an employer of record. An employer of record is actually, the industry that our, founder and CEO, Nicole Zahin, created back 13 years ago when she launched the idea and started to implement opportunity, investing in infrastructure, technology, and teams to build the solution that we offer today. And today we offer this solution across, the globe for companies, many different locations to hire across 180 countries globally. So an employer of record is basically an organization that takes on the legal responsibilities for their customers to hire and maintain global workforce. So what we allow to do as an EOR is businesses to hire employees in different locations without having to set up their own infrastructure, their own legal entity, in a very costly and time-intensive solutions. Replaced by what we bring to the table that is a much more flexible and time-effective way, flexible, compliant, and a value solution to kind of drive the expansion, globally for companies that, typically, need to learn a lot before they're able to go international. So basically what happened in this solution, an employer of record, an EOR handles various employment-related tasks and obligations, including, the payroll, tax compliance, HR support, benefits, employment contracts. So all the implication of maintaining and having a global workforce is taken on by the EOR. But the customer is the one that still is able to leverage the employees locally to operate like if they were fully present in that location.
That's super helpful. Thanks for unpacking an EOR. What's a PEO then? Because I've heard both terms thrown around and I feel like people sometimes YOLO it. They just say they use them interchangeably and they don't really know the difference. So maybe you could unpack that acronym as well.
Yeah, totally. So a PO is frankly, an offering from a PO is complementary to an offering from an EOR, right? So they're not alternatives per se. They are different ways to satisfy different needs in different locations. So a PO is a professional employer organization. That's the acronym. It's basically a company that provides HR services through a co-employment agreement and arrangement. So in case of a PO, typically in the domestic in one country, you have the PO and the customer both being employer from a legal standpoint of the employee in that country. And the PO support and provide HR functions, but on a more specific basis, more limited basis than a more broader EOR offering. Typically is also on a smaller group of countries, because the key component, key differentiator is that in a PO case, the customer still have the need and has the local presence from an entity standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, to operate in that country. They have a legal entity there through which they can co-employ the employee. So typically we see solutions, and we're actually working with many POs to provide a broader offering to our customer, our joint customer. It's a very strong point for GP globally. Where in some cases the PO offering is the one that is right in certain countries for the customer, but in other location a solution like EOR is available through us so that it can actually expand quickly in an efficient way in location where they don't have yet presence. They may need time to kind of get up to speed on setting up entity, bank account, frankly, even knowledge and expertise to build up that presence in a compliant and proper way. So, we actually often go to market together with our partners, proposing a solution that complement each other with different opportunities in different locations.
So the way my simple mind works, an EOR is kind of like a PEO on steroids. It's above and beyond just what the specific tasks that a PEO may offer you.
It's a good way to summarize that, yes. I mean, I think that the main differentiator is that, you don't need to set up local infrastructure, because that's what we bring to the table, in addition to all the technology, the expertise, the knowledge, and the solutions to maintain the employees in country.
Awesome. Simone, you had said have a local presence. And I've heard that kind of packet of words before. What is having a local presence? Is it like a series of check boxes depending on what country you're in?
Yeah, so the way we tackle this area is mainly the following. We're basically thinking about, when a customer, a company wants to have teams, employees in one location. So that can answer different strategic questions that typically the CFO and the leadership team, address and present to take a decision to expand globally. The expansion globally may require local teams in some location to enter the market more efficiently. As an international player, I know and can confirm very well that when you come from outside, in a market, you're an outsider, so you can still succeed, but you have a different path to success. When you have a local team connected with the reality of the businesses in that country, you have a very different way to operate, to compete, frankly, and to be successful. So I think having a local team, local presence, in that way clearly help you to be more effective in your strategy. It can be an expansion strategy, or in some cases, we're looking at opportunity for your customer where they want to set local teams in specific areas where they can have access to different talent, differentiated talent, talent that is not available in country where they are mainly based because of, shortage of workforce or different specializations for, the workforce in that specific country. So, from that standpoint, the back office solution, the expansion of the workforce access that we provide allow you to have this local presence that basically end up to provide more resources, more opportunities, sometimes in a more efficient manner to customers for competing globally in terms of skills and expertise, in terms of hiring the right skill and expertise on a global market, or competing in a new market to expand their output in their market of expansion and growth.
Okay, now we're cooking. I love this. So I'm interested in fleshing out a framework for CEOs and CFOs who are thinking about building teams abroad. Mm-hmm. If I'm a CEO or CFO who's been tasked with evaluating if it's a good idea, are there maybe 2 or 3 key considerations that you should have at the start that you should work through before you start to go?
Yeah, I think in terms of, global expansion, is important to understand what is the strategic and operational consideration of that global expansion, right? So if you want to go abroad, what is the logic? What is the target? And, clearly CFO, you always focus on that. What is the benefit and what are you trying to get out of that expansion? Because it takes resources, it brings on risk to the business, modus operandi. So really drive opportunities that also come with difficulties and potentially some risk. So understanding what are we trying to get out of, that expansion is critical. So the leadership team needs to be very clear on what is the purpose, what is the goal of that expansion. Then is an expansion that is long-term, well-defined and consistent in that specific country, or is an expansion that is tentatively trying to figure out the best solution, the best location to expand globally and build an initial entry in a regional market, like can be Europe or Asia Pacific or other places, Latin America or other places. So there are a lot of strategic consideration of what is the goal that the organization is trying to achieve. Then, once you define that, we need to consider the path to success, clearly define clear metrics. Like you can imagine, the CFO always think about that and always bring that to the table. But then how operationally you can execute on that plan is critical. So as soon as you want to have international presence, and that's where, the solution of EOR comes through very, very interestingly, I think. And I've done a lot of international expansion for many companies in the last 25 years, right? That expanding, your presence internationally require investment in, human capital as well as marketing and infrastructure. Having the ability to understand how much of that are you willing to do, what are the costs associated with all of these one, starting from setting up legal entities, opening bank account in case of employees, set up a payroll registration numbers, find the right talent to hire, understand how people value the packages and the benefits that you can offer in some countries rather than others. Every country is very different, requires a lot of consideration operationally. And that's where, even for myself, frankly, having done international, expansion for larger companies, smaller companies for many years, I didn't know about EOR until the last few years, until 4 or 5 years ago. And the opportunity to me from an industry standpoint resonated quite significantly. The concept is that, you take away all that natural and frankly perennial issues or friction in a global expansion as an EOR solution, similar to the PO when you move domestically. But in the case of EORs internationally, because of the complexity, the differences that are available culturally, procedurally in terms of infrastructure and requirements in different countries, even within same region. I mean, coming from Europe, every single country have very different employment law, regulation, requirements, limitations. Employees appreciate different type of benefits. So all of this diversity, all of these differences is what we interface and basically simplify and eliminate between the local hire, the local team presence and build up, and the customer who wants to expand, globally, the company who wants to expand globally. Because we have built that infrastructure, that interface, that understand all the local need, the requirement, productize that into, we think, a very efficient platform that offer the customer the ability to function and operate through us with a high level of support and understanding of the local needs, and with the ability to manage all this diversity, all this differentiation in a very simplifying, consistent solution, consistent structure.
That totally makes sense. And I was reflecting on like the big reasons why I've tapped into an EOR in the past in my career. And I had split it into 3 buckets. And the first was to have sales feet on the ground in a new region. So I've done it in Japan, in Singapore. We didn't have anybody there. And in order to sell into, big corporations there, we needed to have a local sales team. The second reason was for R&D, so to tap into more developer talent at a better price and at scale. And then the third were to develop centers of excellence. So say if we needed like a payables team or a back office finance function. I remember going to Bucharest, Romania to do that. So those are just 3, I guess, to make it real for people, 3 examples of where I've used an EOR before.
Totally right.
What costs, either time or money, do most people forget to account for when going into one of these arrangements?
It's a great question. Many. I think that, people think initially, just the cost of it running payroll that, we help the customers to take care of. But, the solutions, the time and the cost and the risk associated to global expansion are much larger, right? So as you know, in many different locations, having had experience there, it takes time, effort, cost, and resources to set up a local legal entity. Without a legal entity, you cannot open a bank account. Without a bank account, you cannot, get a payroll registration number and employ people using and leveraging local payroll providers to do that. In addition, the build up of the knowledge base, either hiring or looking for the people who have that and hire them, it's kind of catch-22, right? You need infrastructure and the knowledge to hire the right people to do that. So you use consultant, they're happy to get there, but takes time for you and the consultant to understand and, each other exactly what is the purpose of the expansion, what kind of solution do you want to have. So there is a concrete cost of setting up and maintaining legal entities. Clearly, 20 years ago, many companies, even large companies, were, managing very complex and expanded, legal entity structures. Even then, they simplify significantly, right? As a lot of the benefits came back, and the costs associated to maintain and winding down some of these entities are pretty large and pretty important from a tax, from a legal, from a financial standpoint. So all the complexity of maintaining a legal entity, you set it up, you need to, file, regular tax return, local accounting, filing, local taxes like VAT or other situations. So there is a lot of complexity in maintaining this infrastructure as well that are, significantly material. And by the way, take often time from leadership team. Many of my peers, CFOs, who wants to do that, myself, in the past, I had to go myself, some of my, top players in the team or senior people, sometimes the CEO as well, to become a signatory of bank account. It means, fingerprinting sometimes, copy of the passport sent in different locations, sometimes going to visit, an embassy for, getting approval and things like that. All of that takes time that costs money because, clearly employees are, more effective and efficient when they actually drive business evolution thinking and similar assessment, similar, work. So, all of these costs are quite significant. That's why ultimately the efficiencies and the flexibility, even the time lost, by the way, even the time that it takes to set up this infrastructure and hire people, find the right consultant to support in the process. If you think about, sales, a great example, you want to get and hit the market as soon as possible, right? Well, no, you can't do it because you need to wait 6 months to get a legal entity, a bank account, that people, finally hire. There are some interim solutions, but, they're not as effective and as efficient and don't retain the opportunity to expand that team, in country or in other, similar closely jurisdictions, close jurisdiction in a quick manner. So it all takes, the time that is lost business opportunities, is lost focus from the team on operating, the business effectively and efficiently. And then, the actual cost of filing and maintaining all this infrastructure clearly is something that we take away through the process, and as an EOR solution.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Oh yeah! Go to planful.com/metrics to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. That's planful.com/metrics. Okay, serious question for all my accounting pros here today. Are you doing what you were hired to do? What I mean is, do you have time to actually be a business partner, or are you buried in tedious manual tasks just to get your journal entries prepared every month? I know how that feels. Leapfin's here to help with that. Leapfin is accounting automation software that automatically prepares and posts reliable journal entries. And that's just the beginning. High-growth businesses like Reddit, Canva, and SeatGeek choose Leapfin to eliminate manual tasks, accelerate month-end close, and enable accounting leaders like you to provide faster insights that will help your company grow. If you're battling messy transaction data from Stripe, Adyen, Shopify, Apple Pay, and other PSPs, and then battling again to get it all into NetSuite, go to leapfin.com to watch their short product intro video. And if you like what you see, request a 15-minute conversation to learn how accounting automation can help you and your team. Check out leapfin.com today. That's leap like jump, fin like shark. I just made that up. I hope they're okay with it. Leapfin.com. Mercury knows your financial operations are complex. Founders and finance teams have to pull together different tools, reconcile transactions from different sources, and struggle to get accurate answers. With Mercury, you can simplify your operations with banking and software that power your critical financial workflows, all within the one thing every business needs, a bank account. And with new bill pay and accounting capabilities, you can pay bills faster, stay in control of company spend, and speed up reconciliation. Apply in minutes at Mercury.com and join over 200,000, ambitious startups that trust Mercury to provide the precision, control, and focus they need to transform their financial workflows so they can perform at their best. Mercury, the art of simplified finances. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group and Evolve Bank and Trust. Members FDIC. I'm getting good at that voice. I think leaders also have to keep in mind that, say, if you're going to open up a new office in Costa Rica and hire 20, 30 people, you're going to be expected to go there probably once or twice a year. Like, you have to have a cohesive culture.
That's right, totally. And that's an interesting one, right? Because ultimately, is a transformation that we've seen more globally in company with more remote working. But if you want to expand globally, if you want to get access to, key talent, and good talent know that they have that opportunity and they want some level of remote working, well, again, this is a solution that help you to kind of, get there more in a more flexible way. And sometimes global, flexibility is also helpful. When you hire people in different locations, sometimes they move. With the EOR solution, you can move people in different jurisdictions relatively easily. With your own infrastructure, you need to kind of, lift and shift and replicate the process in different locations. So it definitely takes more time. It's a much more rigid solution that kind of limit the speed to execution and the effectiveness of an organization. And sometimes the access to the right talent as well.
Yeah. I also think one of the big mistakes is people are too optimistic of how soon they can be on the ground somewhere. So they'll do a big study on it and then they'll try to get started and then they'll figure out like maybe we shouldn't do a legal entity. Maybe we should go through an EOR. And then there's bank account considerations. And it always ends up being, I feel like 6 months to a year later. But if I'm the FP&A person who's trying to forecast for that and I'm thinking about when will there be butts and seats in that country, it's probably going to be wildly off.
That's right. And you know that clearly is important for finance to drive and think and model, around these solutions. It's important for the HR infrastructure, the team. They basically need to kind of bring, people on board as soon as possible. That's what I targeted. That's what I measured on as well sometimes. And then the operating team, the sales team, the back office function that you mentioned before, whoever is, benefiting from that local presence, the engineering team sometimes, having that access, in a much more quick way. I mean, again, you said 6 to 12 months, in some cases even more. With an EOR solution, you get there in a week, or in a matter of days, depending on how quickly you want to move through the process.
EORs are also helpful, as you said, if you want to lift and shift and move employees between countries. So to use an example, I've worked with EORs with employees in Ukraine. And when the war broke out there, we had some employees who said, hey, I want to work from Portugal or want to work from France or Spain. It would have taken so long for us on our own to go to the embassy, say in France or in Spain, and try to set something up and then have a bank account in that country. That would have been a total nightmare. But because they were already hired through an EOR, it was easier for them to make the shift, and it was seamless between one payroll to the next.
Totally. I think you hit on a very important point that I didn't touch base yet, but is a great point. There is that change in the environment. Now, you mentioned a case, like, a war or something, major happening. In addition, every single country has continuous changes in their employment regulations, right? They continue to develop and evolve. Now, they're never going to get to the same level in every single country. And again, I cannot imagine, many countries to kind of, start to say, hey, let's do it consistently with everyone else. Everyone has their own, way of doing it. They're going to keep that. But they keep changing and updating and modifying that. And, our solution kind of offered the ability to kind of stay on top of this, because that's what we do for a living. And we do that on a much larger scale across the whole presence we have consistently, across all these locations. So it's not a remote thought about, hey, let me see what changed in this country. If anything happened, like it may happen if you just have, 5 or 10 employees there as part of a global expansion plan or a single company. For us, is a continuous focus of the team, understanding what is changing, continue to update. By the way, productize that offering our technology solution and our AI powered GIA, our AI powered solution to support the customer even more with real time feedback and input is an additional big benefit for the customer that we provide.
This question is for all the FP&A people out there who in a couple months are going to be doing their operating plans for fiscal year 2025. How do I budget for running an international workforce if I am going to work with a GP or someone similar? How do I essentially get to my total effective cost of labor?
Yeah, so I think it's a much simpler way and forecastable way than it is for doing your own solution, right? When you're going to start, the hiring process is the one that's going to drive the starting of the process. So your solutions work in a way where you have fees attached to employees, on seat, working and being processed through the payroll solution that we provide. Understanding, clearly the cost of the employees, all the benefit solution, billing on top, the fee structure that is contractually defined, upfront. Simplify and take away a lot of the variability of managing your companies, separately and independently. So I think that ultimately the ability to kind of, plan with the right cost, the structure that you want to build, understand EOR or the do-yourself kind of solution if they want to kind of look at opportunities as an alternative, or if you already go down the GP way or the EOR way, well, then what you're getting into. That based on your hiring plan, you're going to have specific costs attached related to your hiring in different locations.
That makes total sense. Would it be too simplistic to basically come up with a percentage uplift to use on top of whatever like an employee costs?
It's a bit. I think the industry changed a bit from percentage to more specific fees. But yes, I mean that's a solution as well. And there are some information in the market about pricing and solution that can be checked and applied. But again, in case of a solution where the plan is defined, the discussion directly with the customer support team on the EOR side, on the GP side in this case, can definitely help to understand and plan, for these accordingly.
Yeah. And I think it goes beyond just the percentages too. So like, I'm just going to use round percentages here, but let's say that the benefits uplift in, everything on top of what an employee costs in a certain country is 20%. And then you factor in going through an EOR and it ends up being 30%. you also have to consider, well, what are the fixed costs that you have to have in that area and the maintenance costs ongoing surrounding that? And then also, what do I factor in as the percentage in my head for like risk that I'm underwriting? And what does that help me feel more comfortable with? So like there is the mathematical equation of like, how much does this cost if I was to do it on my own? And then there's the sanity check of like, how comfortable do I feel actually being responsible for all of this?
That's right. With the point as well that, if for any reason that country doesn't work and you want to shift to a different country, you have significant cost of exit. And managing that without the right level of knowledge can be actually quite problematic as well. Because, as you know, we're talking about employment, right? So we're talking about human beings, and the regulation and everything around managing this area is very prescriptive and very, very precise. Managing, understanding upfront what are the implications of some of these, expansion in different countries. As you know, clearly there are different ways of onboarding and offboarding employees in different countries, different locations, different jurisdictions. Can be an important knowledge base in the risk assessment analysis that you're saying, you should definitely do, when you decide to go global.
I never thought about that. The exit cost, if it doesn't work out, you're kind of left holding the bag and you have to figure out logistically and from a cost perspective. I bet you'd be buried in paperwork just trying to leave a country.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a long time to come out. So you have consideration from a tax standpoint or from a legal standpoint or accounting standpoint on how to wind down certain legal entities. So there's a lot of complexity. And again, all of these one clearly comes with a need for some local knowledge that comes through something that you need to kind of consultant you need to find and you need to kind of pay. So therefore, additional costs associated with that.
And so the number one first step is the ability to pay people when you go abroad. How should I think about currency and local banking? How do currency swings factor into the equation here?
Yeah, it's pretty much similar to what will happen in any case if you're going direct. So we don't provide, FX shield or protection for customer. I mean, if they hire someone in a different jurisdiction, they expose themselves to the market variation. Sometimes they get revenue, sometimes they get cost attached to that one. That FX swing, is something that, is intrinsic in the global, expansion of a company. What we provide again is the ability to kind of help monitor, understand, and, provide the level of management, for all of that one. I.e., we have our own bank account, we translate, FX and currency ourselves. Clearly, in some cases, we decide and we work with the customer to define what is the best currency to apply. But in general, the approach is similar. I.e., the complexity of going global doesn't get entirely removed clearly from a customer. When you take a step like this one, even through an EOR, you still expose yourself to the business decision that you go for. And currency is one of the opportunity that you have as well to consider and think that you have to consider. As you know, clearly, as a company, when the size is enough, you can decide to do, put in place your own hedging strategies and things like that. But again, that becomes, the next level of sophistication.
But what about the bank account? The bank account's taken care of at least, right?
Correct. Yeah. So you don't need a legal entity. If you want to hire, for example, some people in Italy, you don't need to open a legal entity there. You need to open a bank account there. In some cases, you have to put some money aside, to guarantee for bank account requirement, things like that. All of that one is taken care of, so you don't have to have anything local in country like that. So you don't need local bank account. You don't need local legal entities.
And I don't need local currency either, right? So you would bill me in USD, and then you would do the FX swap for me, right?
Correct. The different solutions, again, we tend not to kind of bill in many different currencies. We try to kind of keep consistent on that side, but pay clearly the customer in the right way. So yes, and as you can imagine, we touch base on benefits, same on this kind of situation. We have the opportunity to kind of, manage larger volume in transactions across the board, considering to what an individual customer will have to go, and do themselves. And there are costs associated with that as well. If you go yourself, you clearly need to set up a relationship with, exchange, currency exchange, bank and everything else. They clearly take time and cost.
I set up a bank account in Singapore and it took years off my life.
Yeah. And it's not one of the more difficult ones. There are more difficult ones out there.
Really? Are you allowed to say which ones are more difficult, or do you want to keep that one off?
I will keep it offline.
Well, maybe a more benevolent question here. What countries are you seeing the most growth in terms of outsourcing labor or hiring? Are there any interesting ones that are popping up on your radar?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very broad. It's very global. As I said, we cover almost every country you may want to, go to and hire people. I think that the ones that you can see from you American companies, going broader, you have the short, the closest countries like, Canada and Mexico still relevant. We see some good presence in Latin America, Brazil especially. And then, the usual suspect in Europe, UK is an easy expansion plan for many English-speaking, countries. You have Australia, you have different countries in EMEA. Asia, Southeast Asia, Singapore, the Philippines, India, there are also very interesting countries. So say all the countries that you typically think about, global expansion, the one that come in mind. Eastern European countries from an outsourcing point, COE standpoint, are also quite relevant. But, it's interesting because you see the evolution of these countries over time. They start from, low labor costs or more, COE, back office kind of outsourcing, places, to become more relevant market, to become also a market that companies want to target for expansion from a top line standpoint. So it is a continuum evolution that is quite fascinating to see.
And people also forget that there are, like, I can't just take a US centric view to it. There are companies like based in the UK. My wife works for a company in the UK and they use an EOR to employ her in the US. So it goes the other direction too.
Yeah. And we definitely have a lot of customers that way. So we started as a company that was targeting, customer in the US to go globally. Many years ago, Nicole and the team shifted the approach to kind of go global because, clearly there's a need and opportunities for many companies out there, not just, US based. And we have seen, interest clearly in many different locations. Again, it enriches and gives a lot more variability to the business. But again, provide a more global solution that kind of also help to offset, up and down in different countries. In this global economy as well.
And I'd love to know a bit more about your business model in particular. What are the different revenue lines that you forecast for?
Yeah, so we look at revenue in many different ways. Clearly we can slice the data, looking at cohort analysis, evolution on the basic, metrics like the number of employees that we employ for our customers. The location, the geo split, revenue by sales motion, size of company from SMBs to large organizations. So we cut a slice and analyze the business in many different ways. In terms of reporting, pretty straightforward is that, just the P&L looks relatively straightforward. In this situation you have for EOR, you process payment for payroll as well. So you have gross pass through as well that, we as an industry typically don't report in our revenue. We report the net as our, revenue line. We take the pass through, the payroll that is, paid for the customer, out of our, net revenues. And we just recognize the net revenues as the more relevant metrics. That is clearly, the revenue, the money that we make out of, providing services and support, and the technology related to the maintenance and the management of the employees.
Do you call it a take rate? Is it effectively a take rate business in a way?
Yeah, we monitor that. We look at that one as well. That's right.
Do you have a North Star metric that you push your teams to track maniacally?
Many. I mean, I clearly focus on many of them. The key ones for me is the kind of growth, revenue in a profitable and a cash flow positive manner to ensure that the company continue to kind of create value and continue to expand and generate opportunity to continue to expand and reinvest in the industry, in the market, in the company. I think that from an expansion standpoint, I always, stress is very important not to forget about cash. So cash is critical. In terms of growth and expansion, the play is more exciting. The most exciting part of the play is very interesting for us to look at customer growth. The cohort analysis at that level is very important. How do we upsell our customer? How we retain them over time? Is clearly very important. As a SaaS-enabled company, tech-enabled service company, we clearly focus on NRR as similar metrics. So the many of them is difficult to pick up one because they're all contributing to the effective understanding of the expansion of the company and the health of the company. But I like a lot NRR, frankly. They kind of connect to the revenue growth.
And you can increase your net dollar retention rate or your NRR probably by upselling customers on, hey, you should also expand your workforce to go to a different country, or you should hire more people and double down on your footprint here. Is that how you would look at it?
That's right. I mean, I think we have, we onboard customer, we show that opportunity that an EOR solution like ours provide. And as they benefit from the opportunities, it's likely that, they like the expansion they saw in one country, well, if the company is healthy, they probably have opportunities in the next country and many from there, right? So bring the customer on board, with a certain number of professionals, we call them, or employees, and help them to kind of see the opportunities to continue to benefit from further expansion globally is a very important opportunity. That's what I was calling upselling. Totally agree on that. Plus, there is the creation of new logo, new customers that clearly quite very important. The fascinating point is that, this is a very still pretty much a very small industry in terms of awareness out there. Not that many people or many, peers of mine or CFO or CEOs that I talk to know about EOR before we start the conversation. And that's great because that's a great opportunity for expansion, once the awareness get to the right level to really, be able to cover what I was mentioning before is the global market. And, there are hundreds of thousands of companies, I think, out there that can benefit from a solution like this one that probably didn't hear about the opportunities yet and are still trying to figure out how do I open a legal entity in this country? Who do I send there to open a bank account? Who can I call to kind of figure out how to hire people? That is all complexity that is not needed.
And that dovetails into my next question. Do you describe yourself as a tech company? What bucket do you put GP in?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are a tech company where we also bring a level of deep human expertise and service that others in the company, in the industry, frankly, cannot match. That comes from having started this company, 13 years ago. So with a lot of history, with the right focus on infrastructure, knowledge base, and automation and technology and platform. And that's, by the way, today is what is allowing us to leverage Gen AI to the next level. Everyone talks about Gen AI, of course I have to mention it, but the good news for me as a company, as a CFO of GP, is that I think Gen AI is as good as the knowledge base you apply that to. The technology is great. You need to continue to kind of, make the technology learn, like for any of us, right? So the opportunity we have with all the knowledge, all the expertise and experience we have to continue to build on top of that is material. So I think there is a continuous acceleration into the technological side of, scalability and efficiencies that kind of reflect itself into improved service level and everything. You are top notch in terms of service level in the industry. And look, we're saying that we use a leading SaaS-based, solution backed up by a lot of experience in an area that, clearly make the human component critical because, again, is talking about people. And last year, now back almost a year ago, we also introduced the what we call the first of its kind generative AI-enabled global intelligent assistant. We call it GIA. That is a Gen AI solution that provides better and faster way for businesses to navigate their global growth journey. We are discussing that, using that internally. We're helping customers to take advantage of opportunities and continue to kind of expand our scalability model through a lot of technology as well.
Yeah, you forget that there's so much data that follows the humans in whatever country they're in. And if you're going to be responsible with helping a company expand, you owe it back to them to give them the proper information to make decisions on the fly.
And look, you can argue, well, you can probably find a lot of information out there in the public domain. Well, the benefit on all this technology like Gen AI is when you have a good internal base of curated knowledge. Otherwise, the algorithm doesn't go above and beyond certain points, right? And that's, I think, is the important point on companies that are not just started this journey 3 years ago, but kind of build it up over time. They build the right focus on that one. I think is a very critical opportunity for us.
That's awesome. I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So the first question I ask everybody, so you're a successful person, but what's something you've screwed up on the job? It could be here or any previous role.
Yeah, I would say previous roles. No, kidding aside, I think it's sometimes I've seen situation where, especially in the early days, where as a up and coming person who's trying to really prove himself or herself, you need to ensure they kind of pace and read the room and really understand what is the best way to progress and help the company to get to the right level. So not specific anecdote on this one, but the ability, I went through a program back in the days, with GE, where I was every 4 months in a different location, a different business, different country, with a different team, and you were trained to go in, assess 4-month project, come back, report out, and move to the next solution. So you start to kind of get into a cycle of speed that when you get back into a normal life, 4 years down, when I came back, as the case was in New York with MC Universal, you get back into a reality where people have different situations. They have their own lives in that city, on a regular basis. So people they move fast, but they have different ways to manage the communication in the process through which decisions are taken and things are aligned. So learning that process, coming out of a very fast paced, very everyone kind of think the same way approach to a more diversified play. By the way, took some time, but it's actually enables some up and down. And it happened, interestingly, when we launched Hulu, back with MCU and News Corp, it was a very interesting cross-cultural coordination between two very different companies trying to build a third company that they want to maintain very independent as well. Now, I didn't screw it up. I think it was a very effective play ultimately, and it worked out pretty well, for everyone. But it's very interesting to kind of, for me to kind of morph my approach through the process from, okay, it's great, let's get it done, tomorrow, to how do we really, drive it through, not in the next 4 months, but in the longer term here.
Simone, you used the term read the room. You've operated multiple countries in different cultures. Is the skill of reading the room different in different cultures?
The knowledge about how to read different behaviors, attitude, and approach to conversation is hugely different. The concept is consistent there. So the ability to kind of, pause and observe and talk, is very, I think, very powerful, I think, and consistent across the board. But you're totally right, CJ. It's so different in the way you interact with people in Japan or in Italy or in Brazil or in the US. And, by the way, initially, 1 year after, I started my job at GE in Europe, I came to the States, and already there for me was an interesting pace. And then for 5 years, I worked with people from everywhere in the globe in different locations, working on different projects. Evolved that, level of exposure and awareness, massively. Even the way people communicate, it can be more direct or less direct. I mentioned a couple of examples, we can make many more. And to be successful in interacting with people, bringing the team with you is one of the key points as a leader, right? You need to kind of bring the team, sometimes your own team, sometimes the peers, sometimes other teams, if not the external parties like customer and others, through a journey that you envision. But, you can be the smartest person thinking where you want to go. If you're not able to kind of figure out a way to bring people through the journey with you, you're not going to go anywhere.
You strike me as someone who's a good negotiator. Is the skill of negotiation, does it vary from country to country in the approach and what you want to pull from your toolkit?
It's very different, yes. You have some cases where, the hard negotiation is a must or a given, it's almost expected. In cases where, if you go and negotiate, even not aggressive, but, in a pretty direct manner, too directly, you can, actually end up breaking the whole negotiation, straight away. So yes, it's a fascinating part of the global markets, and one thing that clearly I love.
Okay, next one I got for you. If you could tell your younger self something, knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
Eat healthier. No, kidding aside, is on business stuff. I think the main point is never underestimate the importance of delegation. And setting up as soon as possible the best team you can. We all go through, a journey in our careers where you excel initially as an individual contributor, driving quick assessment, quick results, and you can put yourself, day and night to do that, or managing your own time in a very, very effective way. You can learn to do that. That's going to be a first step. Then, it changes significantly when you need to kind of start to do the same with your own team. And ensuring that, you don't continue to execute, but you help the team to grow into solutions that are supportable, going forward, helping you to kind of, detach yourself from the detail and get to the right level sooner. Frankly, assess your team, as soon as you can, and ensure you develop them, you help them to get to the best possible level, because, once you have a successful team, you're going to be successful. Without that, clearly there's no way. It's too much to pay otherwise for you to kind of step in and help to deliver without the right level of support.
I find delegation is one of the hardest things to learn, because you're giving up the skills that got you to the point you're at now.
Right. It's not a full turn page, but it's definitely a very different change. And the more you continue to do things that you can do in an hour, rather than having the team to do them maybe in 3 hours, they're never going to learn. So you're going to always be stuck to kind of spend that 1 hour on doing something they should not do. And therefore, Are you able to do everything else properly in your professional and or personal life? No, you pay for that. So it's very important. But you're right, it's very counterintuitive. It's very different skills that you need to kind of, be aware of and deliver and execute on and focus on.
But it's the ultimate leverage once you get it down. You feel like it's a superpower.
Yeah. It's a good one to have.
Last one I got for you. What's the craziest thing you've ever had somebody try to expense?
So I worked in media and I work in production companies. So I've seen things that I cannot probably, repeat. But, kidding aside, there is definitely some interesting one. Maybe one of my favorite was that, back in the day, post-COVID, clearly, people start to kind of think differently. I've seen a couple of cases where, actually one case specifically where, one employee thought it was actually appropriate to expense their dog walker because, hey, through COVID, you're home, you got a dog. Well, COVID is out, people are getting pulled back in the office, again, not every day, not the whole time, not everywhere, but for the ones that happen sometimes, for the days you're there, what are you going to do with your dog? Well, you can take care of that like you did before. No, the idea was like, the company asked me to kind of go back, I need to figure out a solution. They should pay for it. It didn't work out.
Yeah. Next thing you know, it's daycare bills too.
That's right.
Simone, thank you so much for being generous with your time. I've learned so much talking to you over the last hour.
CJ, it was great to have a conversation with you and a very interesting question, and really enjoyed the conversation here.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.